The snowstorm was unforgiving. Thick, icy winds whipped across the long, empty road as Officer Miller drove slowly, scanning the white blur for stranded travelers. But then, something made him slam the brakes. A shape, a movement, a cry. He stepped into the freezing wind, squinting through the snow, until his heart dropped. A German Shepherd mother was tied to a wooden post, shivering violently, her fur coated in ice. Around her lay 4 puppies, barely moving, tiny bodies half buried in the snow. Officer Miller sprinted toward them, but when he reached the mother, something froze him in place. She wasn't trying to escape. She wasn't growling. She was shielding something behind her, something he didn't see until she moved her paw. What he discovered next left the tough police officer crying in the snow. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The blizzard hit harder than anyone expected. Snow whipped across the empty highway like white fire, stinging Officer Miller's face even through the cracked window of his patrol car. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, eyes narrowed, scanning the endless sheet of white ahead. Most officers hated winter patrol, but for Miller, nights like this mattered. People got stranded, animals froze, lives were lost in minutes, and tonight, something felt wrong. The radio crackled with static. The wind howled through the trees and the world looked abandoned. His headlights cut through the storm, illuminating nothing but swirling snow until a faint shape flickered on the side of the road. Miller slowed, heart thumping. At first, he thought it was debris, maybe a fallen log buried under snow. But then, it moved. He slammed the brakes. Snow sprayed up around him as he stepped out of the car, boots sinking deep into the icy ground. The cold hit him instantly, sharp, biting, unforgiving. But the shape ahead forced him forward. As he approached, his breath caught. A German Shepherd, shivering violently, was tied to a wooden post, rope cutting into her fur. Her body was hunched, tense, shielding something behind her. Miller's stomach twisted. Around her lay tiny puppies, half covered in snow, unmoving. The storm roared around him, but all Miller could hear was the faintest whimper carried through the wind. His patrol shift was no longer about routine. It had just become a rescue mission. Officer Miller dropped to his knees in the snow, his breath turning to clouds as he leaned closer to the heartbreaking scene. The German Shepherd mother lifted her head weakly, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear, pain, and desperate determination. Snow clung to her eyelashes. Frost crusted around her muzzle. Yet despite her suffering, she tried to stand between him and the tiny bodies at her feet, as if protecting them was the only thing keeping her alive. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you," Miller whispered, voice trembling in the freezing air. The puppies lay motionless, their small chests rising only faintly. Their fur was stiff with ice. Their tiny paws were frozen to the snow beneath them. Miller reached out slowly and touched one. It didn't react. His heart sank. He moved to the next, a twitch, barely noticeable, but hope. "You held on for them," he murmured to the mother, realizing that she had used her own body to block the wind, sacrificing her warmth to keep the puppies alive. But then he saw something even worse. Blood on her legs, on the snow, on the rope binding her. Someone hadn't just abandoned them, they had hurt her. Miller swallowed hard, anger mixing with heartbreak. The mother dog lowered her head onto the snow, exhausted and trembling, but her eyes never left him. She wasn't begging. She wasn't fighting. She was pleading for her puppies, and Miller knew he had seconds to save them. Officer Miller grabbed his pocket knife and began cutting through the frozen rope, his fingers numb and trembling. The mother dog flinched but didn't resist. She was too weak, too cold, too desperate to protect her babies. As the last strand snapped loose, she collapsed forward into the snow, her body finally giving in. "It's okay. I've got you," Miller whispered, gently lifting her head. Her breath came out in thin, shaky wisps. He scooped up the nearest puppy, pressing its icy body against his chest. No movement, no sound. His heart pounded harder. He reached for another, Its body twitched faintly. "Come on, stay with me," he murmured. Then he heard it, a sound so soft he thought he imagined it, a muffled, high-pitched cry coming from under the snow. Miller froze. No, it couldn't be. He dropped to his hands and began digging frantically, scraping through ice and powder until his knuckles bled. Something brushed his fingers, a tiny body, cold, stiff, and buried deep. He pulled it out with shaking hands, a fifth puppy, barely breathing. Its eyes flickered open for a split second, then closed again. Miller's throat tightened painfully. He pressed the puppy against his chest, wrapping his jacket around it, trying to share what little warmth he had. "You fought this hard," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm not letting you die." A tear rolled down his cheek and froze instantly. The toughest moment of his career wasn't facing danger. It was holding a life so small and realizing he might lose it. The wind roared louder, snow whipping sideways as if trying to rip the world apart. Officer Miller gathered all the puppies, 4 limp, 1 barely breathing, inside his coat. Their bodies were frighteningly light, like fragile bundles of ice. He wrapped the mother dog's front legs over his shoulders and lifted her carefully. She whimpered but didn't fight. She couldn't. "Stay with me," he whispered, "all of you. Just stay alive." He staggered through the thick snow toward his patrol car, every step a battle. The storm was growing vicious, visibility dropping by the second. His boots slipped on the icy pavement, but he tightened his grip around the dogs. Losing them wasn't an option. A gust of wind slammed against him, nearly knocking him over. The mother dog's weight shifted, and he stumbled, falling to one knee. The puppies cried weakly from inside his jacket. "No, no, please," he said through clenched teeth, forcing himself up again. He finally reached the car. Hands shaking, he opened the back door and gently laid the mother dog across the seats, covering her with his spare uniform. Then he carefully nestled the puppies around her, creating as much warmth as possible. The mother lifted her head, licking each one slowly, as if counting them. Miller's chest tightened. He rushed into the driver's seat and turned the heater to full blast. Red lights flashed through the whiteout as he sped toward the nearest clinic. This wasn't a drive. It was a race against death. The clinic doors flew open as Officer Miller burst inside, his arms wrapped around the fragile bundle of puppies. Snow clung to his uniform, melting in small droplets across the floor. A vet tech gasped and rushed forward, shouting, "Dr. Hayes, emergency!" The mother dog was carried in next, barely conscious. Her paws twitched weakly as she tried to nudge her puppies closer. Miller knelt beside her, whispering, "You made it. Don't give up now." The veterinarian hurried over, eyes widening at the sight. "Get warming blankets. We need fluids, heat pads, everything we have." The puppies were placed in small incubators, tiny bodies trembling under the warm airflow. The fifth puppy, the one Miller dug from the snow, struggled the hardest. Its breathing was faint, almost imaginary. Minutes felt like hours. Dr. Hayes returned, face grave but hopeful. "They're severely hypothermic, but alive. Whoever left them like that intended for none of them to survive." Miller clenched his jaw. "They were tied, injured. Someone did this on purpose." The vet nodded solemnly. "And one more thing. This little one." She pointed to the fifth puppy. "He wouldn't have lasted 2 more minutes." Miller's chest tightened. The mother dog lifted her head and nudged his hand, as if thanking him. But the biggest shock came next. These dogs, they weren't abandoned. They were dumped to hide a crime. Officer Miller waited anxiously in the hallway, pacing back and forth as snow slowly melted off his boots. Every minute felt like an hour. Then the exam room door finally opened, and Dr. Hayes stepped out with a tired but gentle smile. "They're going to make it," she announced softly. Miller exhaled in pure relief. His knees almost buckled. "All of them?" She nodded. "Even the little fighter you dug out of the snow. He's responding to warmth. He's a miracle." The mother dog was wheeled out next, her eyes brighter now, her breathing steadier. When she saw Miller, she lifted her head and let out a soft, grateful whimper. He knelt beside her, stroking her frost-matted fur. You kept them alive, he whispered. Now it's my turn. 2 days later, the puppies were strong enough to crawl into their mother's belly, tails wagging like tiny flags of victory. The police department launched an investigation into the abandonment and vowed to bring the culprit to justice. But the biggest surprise came when Miller stood to leave. The mother dog limped toward him and placed her head against his leg, refusing to move. Her choice was unmistakable. She'd chosen her new family. Tears filled Miller's eyes as he lifted her gently. "You're coming home," he whispered, "and your babies too." The snow outside had finally stopped. But inside that clinic, a whole new life had just begun.